The gavel came down like thunder, but it wasn't justice that echoed through the courtroom, it was racism wearing a robe. 16-year-old Malik Turner didn't even flinch. He had stopped hoping for fairness the moment he was shoved into the back of a police cruiser for a crime he didn't commit. It was supposed to be a routine day at Lincoln High. Malik was on his way to the robotics lab after final period, same as always. Honor roll student, captain of the debate team, never so much as a detention on his record. But none of that mattered when a white store clerk pointed a shaky finger at him, claiming he had robbed the 7-Eleven 2 blocks away. The cops didn't ask questions. They cuffed him in front of the school's front entrance, where classmates pulled out their phones and whispered, "Figures." The trial moved fast. Too fast. No DNA. No fingerprints. Just a grainy security cam video of someone in a black hoodie. The defense attorney, a frazzled public defender juggling 3 other cases, barely glanced at the footage before conceding, could be anyone. But the jury didn't need proof. Just Malik's skin. The Judge Honorable Raymond H. Whitaker looked like he walked straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Silver hair, square jaw, and a permanent squint like he was always deciding whether someone was lying or just disappointing. He never once looked Malik in the eyes. "Malik Turner," the judge intoned, "you are hereby found guilty of armed robbery and obstruction of justice. Sentencing is set for Monday." Malik's mother, Cheryl, screamed in the back of the courtroom. The bailiff tried to hush her, but her sobs wouldn't stop. She had begged Malik to tell his father. But Malik had refused. He didn't want the world to think he only escaped justice because of who his father was. He wanted to be innocent and treated as such. But America had other plans. 3 days before sentencing, Judge Whitaker received a visit in chambers. The knock was sharp and patient. His assistant peeked in, pale. "There's someone here to see you." He didn't give his name, but he said you'd want to listen. Whitaker grunted. "Send him in." The door opened. In stepped a tall black man in a navy blue suit, the kind that cost more than Whitaker's monthly salary. The judge looked up and froze. "Carter Johnson," he said slowly, "United States Minister of Justice." Carter's voice was calm, but his eyes were fire. "Good to see you, Ray. Been a long time since Harvard Law." Whitaker stood. "Well, what brings you to my courtroom?" "You sentenced my son," Carter said. The judge blinked. "My son, Malik Turner." There was a long silence. Whitaker sat down slowly, staring at the polished oak of his desk. "That boy is your—" "My son," Carter repeated. "And I'm not here as the minister. I'm here as a father." Whitaker's lips parted, but no words came out. He hadn't even considered the boy's background. He had seen black and accused and filled in the rest with his own biases. Carter leaned in. "Do you know what it's like to sit in your office, look out at this country, and realize your child is still seen as a threat because of the color of his skin?" "Carter, No, you don't. You never will." When Carter left, the silence that followed wrapped around Judge Whitaker like a noose. Meanwhile, Malik sat in his cell at the juvenile detention center, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many other black boys were buried under the weight of lies and lazy justice. The food was cold. The guards were colder. One of them, Officer Griggs, made sure to call him boy every chance he got. The word stung, not because of its simplicity, but because of its history. His bunkmate, Darnell, was only 14, picked up for loitering outside of Walgreens. That was 3 months ago. Still no trial. "You think your pops will get you out?" Darnell asked one night. "I'm not telling him," Malik replied. "But you did nothing." "Doesn't matter. If I use his name, they'll say I cheated the system, that I got off easy. I want to beat this the right way." Darnell didn't answer. What could he say? There was no right way for kids like them. Only ways to survive. But wheels were turning outside. Carter wasn't done. He had pulled every case that passed through Judge Whitaker's courtroom in the last 5 years. The data was chilling. Black defendants were 3 times more likely to receive the maximum sentence than their white counterparts. Carter called in reporters, lawyers, investigators, and Malik's case became a spark in a storm of fury. News broke across the country. Minister of Justice's son wrongfully convicted by biased judge. Video clips of the trial surfaced. Civil rights groups rallied. Protesters stood outside the courthouse holding signs that read, "Justice for Malik," and "Being black is not a crime." Judge Whitaker, cornered and exposed, scheduled an emergency reevaluation hearing. His tone had shifted. He called Malik young man instead of defendant. He asked questions this time, real ones. Where were you at the time of the robbery? In a robotics lab. Mr. Nguyen can confirm it. And why didn't your attorney mention that? He never asked. The courtroom was tense. Reporters leaned forward. Cheryl held her breath. Mr. Nguyen, the teacher, was called. He confirmed Malik had been in the Laban camera the entire time. Time-stamped footage was played. Crystal clear. Malik hadn't even left the building. Judge Whitaker cleared his throat. I apologize. I made a grave error in judgment. Malik stood slowly. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You saw my skin before you saw me. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Whitaker paled. I understand how it must feel. No, you don't. But now maybe you'll start listening. The judge vacated the conviction. Malik was free, but the story wasn't over. As Malik stepped out of the courtroom, cameras flashing, he didn't smile. He looked back at the building behind him. My name is Malik Turner. I am a student, a son, and a believer in justice. But this system tried to erase me. And I'm not the only one. If you're listening, don't just fight from a fight for all the names you've never heard. The crowd roared. Carter put a hand on his son's shoulder. For the first time in days, Malik let himself breathe. But what came next would shake the justice system to its core. The press exploded. By dawn the next morning, Malik's face was on every major news outlet in the country. CNN, The New York Times, NPR. Interviews were requested. Celebrities tweeted. Hashtags like Justice for Malik and Whitaker must go flooded social media. But Malik didn't care about trending topics. What haunted him most was how easily everything he was, his name, his future, his humanity, had been erased in just one courtroom session. He hadn't even done anything. That was the part that clawed at his chest when he tried to sleep. His mother paced the kitchen that night, fingers trembling as she stirred the tea she didn't plan to drink. You should have told your father, she whispered for the 100th time. I wanted to stand on my own, Malik said, arms crossed. I thought if I told the truth, that would be enough. It never is, she replied. Not for us. Carter sat silently in the living room, the weight of the scandal coiling around him like smoke. He had spent a lifetime working to reform the justice system from the inside. Now his own son had become a headline proving just how broken it still was. What are you going to do? Cheryl asked him, voice brittle. Carter finally looked up. I'm going to burn the whole rotten structure down piece by piece. He meant it. By the end of the week, Judge Whitaker was under formal investigation. Anonymous sources from the court began leaking evidence of a deeply entrenched pattern. Harsher sentencing for minorities, dismissals of key witnesses, even private communications with prosecutors that violated due process. The Department of Justice launched a probe. Whitaker's face disappeared from the bench. His name became synonymous with systemic injustice. But the real story wasn't just about Whitaker. It was about the system that allowed a judge like him to thrive for decades without question. Carter gathered a task force of civil rights lawyers, public defenders, and data scientists. He called it the Malik Project. Their goal: identify and challenge wrongful convictions in juvenile courts nationwide, starting with racially biased patterns. Within 2 months, over 312 cases were flagged for review. Boys just like Malik, kids without fathers in power, kids whose stories never made the news. Meanwhile, Malik struggled with his new reality. Freedom didn't come with peace. His name was cleared, but the looks in the hallways at school hadn't changed. Some classmates offered fake sympathy. Others whispered that he probably did something wrong, just didn't get caught. "You should have smiled more for the cameras," one girl said after class. "You looked angry." "I am angry," Malik replied, "and I'm allowed to be." His robotics coach offered him a ride home one day. They sat in awkward silence for most of it, until Coach finally said, "For what it's worth, I always believed you." Malik turned to him. "Then why didn't you say anything?" Coach opened his mouth, closed it, said nothing. Even his best friend Jamal didn't know how to act anymore. Malik had changed. He saw things differently now, like the veil had been lifted. Every school policy, every security guard, every raised eyebrow from a teacher felt like a threat disguised as protocol. He found himself retreating into books. Not textbooks. She was done pretending grades could protect him, but books about history, law, resistance. He devoured the writings of James Baldwin, Angela Davis, Ta-Nehisi Coates. Their words gave him armor, clarity. And then one day, the phone rang. His father stood in the hallway, holding the receiver, eyes unreadable. "It's for you," Carter said. "Someone important." Malik took the call. "Hello." The voice was deep, calm, familiar from TV. "Malik Turner, this is President Diane Everett. I wanted to thank you. Your story has sparked a national reckoning." Malik blinked. "I didn't do anything." "You told the truth. In this country, that's everything." She invited him to Washington. A national panel was forming: youth voices, justice reform, public oversight. She wanted him there. At first, he said no. But Cheryl sat him down that night, cupping his face in her hands. "This isn't just about you anymore. It never was." So Malik went. At the Capitol, surrounded by marble pillars and people who suddenly treated him like a symbol, Malik gave a speech. "When I was locked up," he began, voice steady, "the guards never used my name. They called me boy, over and over. I wasn't a student. I wasn't a son. I was a threat, a file, a statistic." He paused. "But now they say I'm an inspiration. Some of the same people who ignored what happened to me are now patting me on the back. They want me to smile for the cameras. But I'm not here to smile. I'm here to ask, how many more Malik Turners are out there right now? How many are still locked away?" The room was quiet. "I'm not here because I was saved. I'm here because I survived." That's not justicide's luck. And luck should never be the difference between freedom and a cell. Applause. Standing ovation. But Malik didn't smile. He had more work to do. That same night, while watching news clips of himself speaking, something inside him shifted. He didn't just want to speak, wanted to fight. He applied for an internship at the Innocence Project. He volunteered at juvenile detention centers, talking to kids who still didn't believe anyone would ever care about them. He wrote op-eds. He spoke on panels. He made noise, and people listened. But not everyone cheered. A shadow campaign emerged, anonymous accounts posting conspiracy theories about Malik being a pawn of his father. Right-wing commentators claimed the real injustice was how a judge was ruined by political pressure. Threats arrived at their home. One letter read, "Next time, keep your black brat in line." Malik read it. Then he burned it. He told his father, "If they're afraid of the truth, good. That means we're winning." Meanwhile, Judge Whitaker appeared on television, grim, hollow, reciting a half-hearted apology. "I never intended to cause harm," he said, "but I recognize the harm I've done." Carter turned off the TV. "He's scared," Cheryl said. "He should be," Carter replied. "But fear's not enough. Change is." That change came faster than anyone expected. Congress, pressured by mounting public outrage, passed the Youth Sentencing Fairness Act. It mandated transparency in sentencing, data audits of judges, and mandatory bias training for all juvenile court officials. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The law was unofficially known as Malik's Law. One night, sitting on the roof of their home, Malik asked his father, "Do you think it's over?" Carter shook his head. "No, but we've carved a crack in the wall. And one day, that wall's gonna fall." Malik looked up at the stars. Quiet for a long time. "I used to think the world was fair," he said. "Now I know it's not. But I also know we can make it fair." Carter smiled. That's the difference between cynicism and hope. Cynicism says the system is broken and always will be. Hope says it's broken, and we're the ones who can fix it. Malik nodded. The boy who had been wrongfully convicted was now the face of a movement. And he was just getting started. The movement grew louder. Malik no longer walked through the world unseen. Everywhere he went, strangers recognized his face. Some offered shy words of support, a nod of respect. Others stared too long, their eyes full of resentment, as if he had stolen something from them by surviving. But Malik didn't crave recognition. He craved results. The Malik Project had started as a response. Now it was a revolution. With Carter's influence and Malik's fire, the organization was opening regional chapters across the country, legal clinics for juveniles, mentorship programs in underserved schools, direct action initiatives in courtrooms that had long operated in the shadows. One of those courtrooms sat in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where a 15-year-old named Jalen Reese had just been sentenced to 25 years without parole for allegedly pushing a white classmate during a cafeteria fight. No one had been seriously injured. No weapon was involved. But Jalen had been painted as aggressive, dangerous, and lacking remorse. He was tried as an adult, without media attention, without mercy. Malik read the transcript and felt sick. The language echoed his own case. The same coded terms. The same bias cloaked in authority. "Let's go to Baton Rouge," he told Carter. "Are you sure?" Carter asked. "It'll be hostile. The judge there isn't like Whitaker. She won't fold under pressure." Malik's reply was simple. "Then we press harder." When they arrived, protesters were already gathering outside the courthouse. The Malik Project had sent legal reinforcements. National news crews followed. It was Malik's first time stepping back into a courtroom since his own trial. The same knot of dread twisted in his gut, but now he had armor. He sat beside Jalen's mother during the appeal hearing, his hand gently gripping hers. She couldn't stop crying. "They made him look like a monster," she whispered. "He's just a kid." Jalen's new Liera fiery woman, named Nadine Brookstore, through the prosecution's arguments. She exposed the inconsistencies in witness testimony, the lack of prior offenses, the racial disparity in sentencing. And she invoked Malik's case as a precedent. The judge, an older white woman named Vivian Moore, didn't react. Her face was stone. But then Malik stood. He wasn't scheduled to speak. But the room fell silent as soon as he rose. "Your Honor," he said, voice even, "I'm not here to speak on Jalen's behalf. I'm here to speak on yours." Whispers filled the gallery. "You have a choice today," he continued. "You can be remembered as another cog in a machine that punishes children because of their skin, or you could be the one who stops the machine for a moment long enough to see the human being in front of you." Judge Moore didn't blink. He's not a statistic. He's not a headline. He's a 15-year-old boy who needs guidance, not a cage. Then Malik did something unexpected. He took out a photo of himself, at 15, in his orange jumpsuit. The same expression Jalen had worn during sentencing, defiance mixed with fear. He held it up. "This is who I used to be. Don't turn him into me." Silence. After a long pause, Judge Moore leaned forward. "Counsel will approach the bench." The hearing was suspended for review. Malik stepped outside into a sea of flashing cameras. Reporters swarmed. "What do you hope comes of this?" one shouted. Malik looked directly into the lens. "I hope she has a heart." 2 days later, the ruling came down. Jalen's sentence was overturned. He would be released into community rehabilitation and counseling, something he never would have had without Malik's intervention. The celebration was short-lived. That night, back in Washington, a brick was thrown through the window of the Malik Project headquarters. A note was left behind, scrawled in red marker. "You're next. Carter tightened security." Malik shrugged it off. "They're scared," he said. "Let them be." But the threats escalated. Dozens of hate emails, doxing attempts. Malik's old school files leaked online, twisted to fit conspiracies. Some called him a race baiter, others a privileged brat weaponizing his daddy's power. Malik refused to be silenced. He began writing a memoir convicted without a voice, chronicling not just his story, but the stories of every boy the Malik Project helped. Each chapter was a testimony, each page a protest. As he wrote, he returned often to the night after his release when he first stood in the mirror and asked himself who he wanted to be. Not a victim, not a hero, something real, something useful. He finished the manuscript in 4 months. His publisher fast-tracked the release. Pre-orders shattered records. But one person didn't read it. Judge Whitaker. Malik sent him a copy anyway, with a handwritten note. "You were wrong. I hope you never forget that." 2 weeks later, Malik received a letter in return. The envelope was crisp, the handwriting careful. "Malik, you were right. I saw you as a threat before I ever saw your face. I wore the robe like it made me immune to the truth. It didn't. I've resigned from the bench. I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope my name fades from your memory and your story continues without it. R.H. Whitaker." Malik read it twice, then tore it in half. He didn't need closure. He needed change, and change was coming. The Department of Justice invited Malik to co-lead a new federal oversight initiative aimed at racial bias in juvenile courts. His job: speak truth to power, monitor, audit, hold accountable. It was more than symbolic, it was structural. But Malik wanted more. He applied to Harvard Law School. Carter blinked when he saw the application on the table. "You sure about this?" he asked. Malik smiled. "Yeah, I want to build the tools I used to be crushed by." He was accepted. Orientation week. He walked across campus with his head held high. Not because he felt above anyone, but because he knew what it took to get there. Not grades, not legacy, survival. His classmates whispered when they saw him. "Is that?" "Yeah, that's him." He didn't care. During his first lecture, the professor asked a question about justice. Malik raised his hand. "Justice isn't a destination," he said. "It's a fight. And some of us were born into the ring." Heads turned. Pens scribbled. The professor nodded slowly. "Mr. Turner," she said, "you'll do well here." But Malik didn't want to just do well. He wanted to rewrite the rules. And for the first time in his life, the system had no idea what was coming. Harvard Law wasn't a fresh start, it was a battlefield dressed in ivy. Malik Turner walked through the halls not as a wide-eyed student, but as someone who had already stared injustice in the face and lived to fight it. Professors were cautious around him. Some revered his insight. Others resented the attention he brought. To them, he was more than a student, he was a symbol. But Malik refused to be reduced to that. He was there to build power. In his first semester, he created a student coalition focused on racial justice in education. They held workshops, mock trials exposing judicial bias, and published damning exposés on discriminatory admissions policies in law schools nationwide. Within months, the coalition grew beyond Harvard branches sprouted at Columbia, Yale, Stanford. What started as a campus group became a national student network called Justice Rising. But law school wasn't only lectures and victories. It tested Malik's resolve. In one seminar, a white student named Derek challenged him. "I'm sorry, but I think some people exaggerate the role race plays in the justice system. he said casually. Statistically, crime is still more common in certain communities. Malik's jaw tightened, but he didn't lash out. He leaned forward. Communities don't cause crime. Conditions do. Poverty, over-policing, lack of opportunity. And when the system punishes people more harshly based on their zip code or their skin, that's not justice. That's control. Derek rolled his eyes. You're speaking emotionally. No, Malik replied. I'm speaking from experience. I was convicted of a crime I didn't commit. You know what that taught me? Not that the system is broken, that it was built this way. The room fell quiet. Even a professor sat back and let the moment breathe. Later that evening, Malik sat in the library alone, rereading case files from the Mallet Project. Boys still waiting for appeals. Families still praying. Each page made his mission clearer. He wasn't just here to become a lawyer. He was here to become a weapon. Back in Washington, Carter Johnson was planning his exit. After decades in public service, he was stepping down as Minister of Justice. The announcement shocked the press. Whispers spread. Was he pushed out? Was it political fallout? But Carter made it clear. It's time for new voices, he said. Voices like my son's. Malik watched the press conference on his laptop, heart full. For all their differences, his father had always been his anchor. Later that week, they met at the Lincoln Memorial. Just the two of them. You're really leaving, Malik said quietly. I've done what I can from inside, Carter replied. Now it's your turn to build from the ground up. There was a pause. The sun was setting behind the monument, casting long shadows over the reflecting pool. Are you scared? Malik asked. Only of what would have happened if you hadn't spoken up. They didn't need to say more. By the time Malik graduated, he had already passed the bar and received over a dozen offers from top law firms. He turned them all down. Instead, he opened his own, Turner Justice Initiative, a nonprofit legal firm rooted in communities most affected by incarceration. Its mission: defend the voiceless, dismantle corruption, and build a new kind of legal system rooted in equity. His first major case was against the very state that had wrongfully convicted him, Turner versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The lawsuit argued that the state had knowingly allowed a pattern of racial bias to persist in juvenile courts. If won, it would mandate systemic reform, including independent review boards, public sentencing databases, and mandatory representation quality standards for all public defenders. The trial was national news. Opposing counsel painted Malik as a radical. You're not seeking justice, the prosecutor sneered in court. You're seeking revenge. Malik stood up calmly. No, I'm seeking accountability. There's a difference. In closing arguments, he delivered the speech that would go down in legal history. There are thousands of boys just like I was sitting in cold cells, waiting for someone to care. Not because they're guilty, but because they were easy targets. Because no one thought they'd fight back. But we're fighting now, and we're not stopping. The courtroom held its breath. 3 weeks later, the court ruled in his favor. Malik had changed the law. Years passed. The Turner Justice Initiative expanded into 15 cities. Recidivism dropped where they operated. Wrongful convictions declined. Public defender salaries rose under new legislation. And Malik? He became what no one expected him to be. Hope, not the soft kind that waits. The loud, relentless kind that knocks on courtroom doors with fists full of truth. On the 5th anniversary of his exoneration, he returned to the juvenile detention center where he had once slept on a concrete cot. The same guard who used to mock him was gone. In his place was a new Wardena black woman named Officer Daniels, who welcomed Malik with a warm handshake and misty eyes. You made us proud, she said. Malik looked around the facility. Cleaner, brighter, counselors, not just guards, books, not just bars. Progress. In the rec room, he met with a group of kids. Some smiled when they saw him. Others looked away, afraid of hope. He sat in a circle with them. "I was you," he said simply, "and I got out. But more than that, I came back. Because no one gets left behind." One boy, maybe 13, raised his hand timidly. "How did you know you'd make it?" Malik took a breath. "I didn't. But I knew who I didn't want to become. And I knew what I had to fight." The boy nodded, then asked the question that had haunted Malik for years. "Do you think it'll ever be fair?" Malik paused. "No," he said honestly. "Not unless we make it that way." 10 years later, Malik stood on a new stage. Not a courtroom, not a lecture hall, the National Mall. Hundreds of thousands stood before him, gathered for the first National Youth Justice Summit, an event he had organized. Flags waved, choirs sang, survivors of injustice, now teachers, lawyers, artists stood at his side. Malik stepped up to the podium. He was no longer a boy in an orange jumpsuit. He was a man with a voice and a country listening. "We built this movement because silence is deadly," he began. "We tore down the myths they built to cage us. We replaced fear with truth, anger with action, pain with purpose." Cheers erupted. "But we're not done," he said, raising his fist. "Every child deserves dignity. Every courtroom must be transparent. And every life, every black life must matter in the eyes of the law." The crowd roared. Behind him, on the screens, rolled a video tribute faces of those saved by the Turner Justice Initiative. Their names, their dreams. Malik's eyes glistened. He ended the speech the same way he had ended his trial appeal so many years ago. "My name is Malik Turner. I was wrongfully convicted, but I wasn't destroyed. I was transformed. And I promise you this, we will not stop until justice belongs to all of us." As the sky turned gold and the crowd thundered back, Malik stepped down from the podium and into history, not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as the spark that ignited a new era of justice. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.